All right. Hello. I'd love to dedicate this episode to anyone who is dedicated to preserving and sustaining their pleasure through their artistry and through their advocacy and through their activism. Because there's nothing more pleasurable than being your full, free, self actualized self. And to be an activist, to be an advocate, to speak up, to resist, or go against is literally just a preservation of the things that you find pleasurable and just being able to live life in the way that you feel called to. So I dedicate this episode of The Unbound Visionary to you, to all of you, to me, to all of us. Because one thing about it, I am committed to a life of pleasure. And it's funny because I came to this realization yesterday, or the day before yesterday, I want to say, as I was just reflecting on my artistry and who I am and how I move through life and what motivates me and what moves me into action and into motion. And I'm reflecting on an event or something that happened last week, and I went live on YouTube, and here on my Substack last week. And I was offering like a live journal session. 3 nights in a row, I went live. And on the first night that I was going live, I literally had a day full of things to do. Like I was gonna do this, I was gonna do this, I was gonna do this, I was gonna do this to prepare for the live, but also just things that I had to get done in general. And I woke up that day and I was like, no, I'm prioritizing this live. I'm prioritizing and prepping myself to be ready for this live. Got up, took a shower, had a slow morning, made sure I ate several times because I needed to eat to make sure I had energy and be mentally and emotionally prepared. I took a nap. I prioritized rest, food. People needed things from me, and I was like, no. Also, I could be prepared for this live, which is something I was looking forward to, something that I enjoyed creating and cultivating and facilitating. And it was very simple. It was just like, hey, I'm here if you need me as a body double. Please journal. Here's a prompt if you need it. The prompt was about understanding what your foundation, how, it was understanding the health of your foundation. Because I'm big on people taking their power back. And in order to take your power back, you have to assess what you're bringing your power back into, what your power stems from, or what you believe about your power. And so I just had a journal prompt on the screen, some music playing, and I was just like, hey, I'm here in the back if you need me, but really this time and space is for you to decompress. And I enjoyed it so much. So much. Because journaling has literally changed my life. It's allowed me to deepen my spiritual practice. It's allowed me to move through my anxiety. It's allowed me to clear my mind. It's allowed me to root deeper in myself and what I know to be true about myself and what I don't accept about my reality. um, I was actually talking to my partner yesterday that, I think it's wild that, I'm considered a delusional person when I think it's interesting that I see things for the illusions that they are, and I'm real about the fact that things are illusions, but I'm delusional in that. But I am also delusional because I often do believe in things without the hard facts. So, or as people call it, faith. I do have a lot of faith in things. But there are also parts of myself that people consider delusional when really I'm just like calling out the illusions and bullshit I see. But that's a conversation for another day. And so yeah, so just going back to the other day of just like facilitating, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a great time. That replay is there on my YouTube if ever you need it. Just me just being there, a presence and a prompt. I use the same prompt all 3 days because I didn't intend to start for it to be a live journal session, but it turned into one. And I love that so much because I've always wanted to do like a online journal prompt community. So it just happened to turn into that. And I thought that was really cool, really sweet. And I was just reflecting on the fact that you all don't know me, but I can share that there are some days where I forget to eat. There are some days where I don't prioritize food and like sustenance and rest and preparation and boundaries. There are days where, some days are better than others when it comes to boundaries and staying on top of the personal things that keep you going and that keep you nourished and nurtured. And because I was so excited and so ready to show up and be prepared to do something that I found pleasurable and do what I wanted to do, I made sure that everything was in place mentally, spiritually, emotionally for me. I wasn't willing to give any more energy than I could give. I wasn't willing to be hungry and not nourished. I wasn't willing to be tired, and I wasn't willing to be unprepared. Like, I literally set aside 2 hours to I did a tech check. I prepared. I did an outline. I made notes because again, it was supposed to be something else, but it turned into the live journal prompt. Because I'm understanding that I don't always have to be on camera talking. Sometimes my presence is enough. And I was just like, whoa. Like, that's crazy for me because there are days where sometimes I'm fighting myself to rest. Sometimes I'm fighting myself to eat. Sometimes I'm fighting myself to make sure I'm transitioning into my task well, and I'm spacing out my day and I'm spacing out my time. I'm assessing my energy. And I realized, and I decided that pleasure primes me for life. Like, pleasure primes me for the things that I say that I want and do. Like, I am so deeply committed to pleasure that I'm willing and just willing to prepare my vessel to receive it. And I was just blown away by that fact. And I've been doing a lot of reflecting because I realize I have a lot of shame around pleasure, because pleasure in the culture that we live here in the West, in the Americas, or to the indigenous Turtle Island, there's just weird connotation about pleasure. Like, pleasure is always associated with a sexual thing, and I think sex can be a part of pleasure, or sexuality can be a part of pleasure, but it's not the whole of it. And I realize, because I'm so vastly aware that people may misunderstand me when I talk about pleasure, it makes me afraid to embrace it and say that that's what I want and that's what I need and require for the life that I live. And I was talking about this yesterday in my video about I'm an artist, not a business owner. I was just talking about how pleasure is what has rooted me in knowing and believing that I'm an artist, because I don't know who knows pleasure more than an artist. You know, I find creating and art for me is deeply pleasurable. And so I realized I had this shame around saying that and embracing that. And there's also this really interesting conditioning that I have that tells me that life has to be hard. Life has to be difficult. There isn't room for pleasure and joy. Especially not when we know on a global stage that people are suffering. There's no room for pleasure and joy. And I'm not saying, and I guess this is a great time for me to say, my pleasure, as often as I can decide for it to not to, my pleasure, I make a very intentional efforts for my pleasure to not come at the expense of somebody else's life. Like, from a lot of the decisions I make about where I shop, like who I patron, the things I watch, the things I enjoy, I'm always, in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, like, does this cause harm to someone somewhere around the world? So that is that is one of the roots and foundations of my pleasure. So pleasure for me is not completely hedonistic. It's not completely like fuck all y'all, like like no. Cause I ain't gonna hold you. Sometimes there's days where I'm just like, oh baby, this is gonna have to be about me. Sorry about it. You know what I'm saying? You do require those days. Those days are needed and necessary. But 9 times out of 10, I'm definitely largely aware of any decision I make, especially when it comes to my pleasure. Anywho's and Susan. So yeah, I've just been thinking about that and reflecting about that, and I was just like, damn, like, I've always had this like narrative that I was lazy for so long, and it's like, I'm not lazy. I'm just uninspired. I'm just not motivated. Where is the pleasure in this thing? Like even like I said, like eating and resting and napping, like I think I just need pleasure to motivate me. It's just like a huge motivator for me. And I think this would be a great time to define what I mean by pleasure. And I think that's where I'm at right now. Because I feel like I woke up, like again, like I'm in the midst of all these reflections about, how was it that I was able to really be intentional about how I spent my time and my energy and my day to prep for this live that I was looking forward to. I've been spending this time thinking about what does it mean to be an artist, and how does that motivate me, how does pleasure motivate me altogether. And so I'm thinking about all these things, and I was just like, damn, like I feel like I woke up one day and the pleasure was gone, like in my life. And I realized that I had to be the one in charge of my own pleasure. I had to be the one to center pleasure in my life. Like, I'm not asking for anyone who's watching me or listening to me to agree with what I'm saying. I'm just expressing and sharing my truth and embracing that the power and the place that pleasure plays in my life. And me saying that I'm willing to embrace it because for so long I haven't. And who does that hurt? We're all wired differently, and I'm just wired how I'm wired. Pleasure is a requirement over here. Pleasure is necessity over here. And I'm not saying that that has to work for anybody else, but I'm just saying, like, I'm embracing that because if that is what I require, that's what I need, then it harms me to go against that knowing and that belief. Because that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been dealing with this shame and these narratives. And so, as I'm thinking about me realizing I have to center pleasure in my life, I was like, okay, well, then what does that mean for me? So I've decided that I have to define what pleasure is for me. And I've decided that I've decided I have been identifying what pleasure means to me on different levels, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in work, in play, in artistry, in advocacy. Like, what does pleasure look like and feel like to me, and how do I experience pleasure, and what triggers pleasure in me, brings about pleasure in me in all those categories of my life. And I'm trying to take my time with it because if I realize pleasure is a foundation for me, then I'm not gonna like get that work done. Oh my god, please. I'm not gonna get that work done in sorry, I need to make sure I'm still recording. Yeah, I'm not editing this. Okay, I'm still recording. Okay. I'm not editing this, so we just doing one and done. Okay. But yeah, so I've just been trying to take mental stock of all those categories and how pleasure impacts me in all those categories. And just realizing that it's going to be a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And just deciding that that is worth it. If I have to take the next 2 to 3 months to be intentional about my pleasure practice so that it can reinforce the pleasure I experience and the life that I live, or the life that I say that I want on the other side of that, then 3 months it'll take. So this is not a practice that I'm fully versed in yet. It's something I've probably done all my life, but I want to be more intentional about it. So I'm just taking the time to just start with, what does it look like to me? What does it feel like to me? What do I want it to feel like? And that's pleasurable enough. Like, asking myself what I want something to feel like, I think already is just like, yeah. So already I'm having pleasure within my own pleasure practice about knowing myself deeper. And I feel like I'm really big on getting to know other people, understanding other people, so that I can show up and be like, hey, I heard that you like marshmallows, so I brought you some marshmallows. Like, how can I do that for myself? And I think it's time for me to do that for myself. And so I'm just more than happy to do this little pleasure practice of mine. So it's not something that I've done and I'm well versed in, but it is a practice, and it's a practice because it's not perfect, and it's a journey, and it's a process, and it's something that I'm literally living in this moment, and understanding and defining in this moment. So my pleasure practice is starting with me defining what pleasure looks and feels like to me and how I want it to feel. And then I decided that I want it to be simple. I want it to be simple. Like, I'm not trying to be anal about it. Like, I don't want to be thinking about it all hours of the day. Like, oh, is this pleasurable? Am I being pleasurable? How can I include pleasure here? Like, letting it happen organically. But, starting, just having that awareness of what I want within these next few months when it comes to pleasure. I think that's good enough. Just having that awareness and setting that intention is good enough. And then just going about it very simply. And I've decided that for me, the simplest place that I can start when it comes to my pleasure practice is music. I realized that music was such a huge part of my life growing up. Like as a kid, I was telling my partner the other day, as a kid I would fall asleep with the radio on. Like, I would turn all all the way down low, and I would like go in the hallway to make sure nobody could hear it from my room, and then go run and jump in the bed, and then just go to sleep listening to like Hot 97 or like 105.1 like all night. Um, and then like when I got to and then like middle school, like my dad bought me an iPod. He got me the iPod Shuffle. I was a little salty about it because I was like, oh my god, I want an iPad, and I got one, and that's all I wanted for Christmas. And then it was iPod Shuffle, and I was like shook because it didn't even have a screen, and I was like, what am I going to do with this? How do I know what songs are coming or playing? But I took that thing with me everywhere, and it actually was like really clutch because it was really small, and it was basically a thumb drive. It was basically a thumb drive um for it's basically a thumb drive that you could play music off of it. Like you just stick it. It was like a flash drive. You stick it right in the computer and you put music on and off of it. And when I tell you, I could not go anywhere without that thing. Like my morning commute to school was giving Video Vixen. Okay, I don't know why I was giving Video Vixen because I was listening to Linkin Park and Evanescence, or like High School Musical. So I don't know what Video Vixen was giving, but I definitely was walking down the Brooklyn streets with those emotional ass songs in my ear, just giving main character energy. But that started my commute for the day, that ended my day for school. So music was a ritual for me. And like you are not going on a commute in New York, in Brooklyn, without music. I mean, now I do it like when I'm there. Because now I'm grown and there's no reason why I would allow myself to just deafen the world around me in New York. I'm not about that life anymore. Before I didn't care, full blast, but now the way my anxiety set up, one ear in, one ear out. If I'm even listening to music, because I gotta be on it. So anyway, so music was such a ritual for me. Like I was so dedicated and committed to new music and listening to music and gathering music and going after music and seeking music. Literally, that's what YouTube was for. Before I was watching the vlogs and the beauty videos, we were on YouTube listening to covers and songs and music. And I would love to do, let me not say that, I'm keeping it to myself. But I really love music. And I think that the older that I've become and the more I understand about how programming happens and how conditioning happens, and a lot of that does happen with our mainstream media, I'm less willing to engage with it as much. And let me tell you this, I don't do it often, but I listened to that damn Billie Eilish album and I have been haunted. My emotions are in shambles. I just felt called to listen to the album, which is straight. I don't really listen to people's albums, especially mainstream artists, and I don't know why I decided to do that. That shit was. And I'm a Pisces moon. Like that just literally reawakened the emo beast inside of me, and I'm not okay. I'm not well. This old white girl is haunting me. Haunting me. My emotion is in shambles, and the moon is in Pisces tonight. But music has been such a ritual. Music inspires so much in me. It helps me visualize, it helps me imagine, it helps me feel. And my life has been really quiet because I haven't taken the time to replace the mainstream music that I'm just used to just showing up, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. Like that's how I've been engaging with music. I haven't been going after music. So my life has been relatively quiet for the last 4 years because I don't listen to as much music as I normally would. Like it's just easy to go on Spotify or YouTube and look at what's popular or New Music Fridays. Like I remember when the J. Cole album dropped, there was like a ritual of mine. Like Friday would come or an artist would drop a new song and I would go in my room, headphones. I'm very much like, if I'm listening to an album the first time, I have to listen to it in headphones. Like, what are we doing? Like top to bottom, no shuffle. Like that was like a ritual of mine. And I said all this to say that like the way that I'm slowly stepping into my pleasure practice outside of just being aware of how it looks and how it feels and how I want it to feel is music. And so I'm committed to just reintroducing myself to new music by like Black queer artists. I was listening to Ariel J, Glow 88. You probably heard their song on TikTok. Glow on me, glow on me. Like my new anthem for the summer. So I've been listening to some Ariel J. Because the girlies that I've been listening to, I'm kind of tired of listening to them, which I never thought the day would happen, but I've been listening to the same music for the last 4 years because it's the only music I feel safe listening to, and that's Alec Isley, Tenario, and Amber Mark. Those are like that's who I've been listening to the last few years, and I love them down, but I also want to shake a little ass. Like, so if you all have any elevated shaking some ass music, I'm here for it. Like affirmative, it's like affirmative and reflective, but elevated, but you can shake some ass. Like, and one song doesn't have to fill all those criteria, but like if you know any artists who are black, who are queer, who are international, who are global, like I'm open to different genres. Like I love Ethiopian jazz, I love lo-fi, I'm open. So that's how I'm just like reintroducing myself to pleasures, like reintroducing myself to music, and I'm having a really great time. So yeah, so that's how I'm just like inviting pleasure back in my life. That's how I'm realizing, understanding that I'm not lazy. We just need a little bit more, and I think pleasure invites like an embodiment and an awareness of who you are and what you like and what you need. And I feel like there's so much power in that. There's so much power in that. And if there is anything that someone is going after in life, 9 times out of 10 is for their pleasure. Whether it's just money, because paying their bills and being able to buy themselves anything they want is pleasurable to them. Whether it's being an artist, because the creative process brings them pleasure. Whether it's standing out on the streets and advocating for people's basic human rights and necessities, because it brings them pleasure to know that they are working towards a world and a life where they can be safe and where they can be free and they can live their lives in their lifetime. Everything, like, let's not even downplay how much pleasure is at the center of our lives. We just don't name it. And it could be named, but it could be many different things. But pleasure is at the center and has always been at the center. But it's just been really harmful narratives about what life should be like is what gets in the way of that. And so I hope that if you're listening to this today, that you are committed to your pleasure practice and you're defining it for yourself, or you're now curious about one, or you're just like questioning what that's like for you and for others, even outside of sexual capacity. Like what do you enjoy? Like what brings you pleasure? Like food wise, like art wise, media wise. Like, and truly stepping into that shit and embracing that and just saying like how can you experience that emotion and without draining yourself, like how can you seek that and experience it as organically as possible? And you may look at your life and realize like, wow, I haven't set up my life to invite in pleasure, enjoying the way I need to. And then that's when you just have to have a conversation with yourself and be like, why not? Why is it my life designed to allow in more pleasure? What do I think about pleasure? Do I make space for pleasure? Do I value it? So maybe I'll make a journal prompt. I think I might make a little guide just talking about pleasure and thinking about pleasure. I'm gonna run this video back and write these questions down. I'm gonna run this audio back and write the questions down. But other than that, I wish you so much pleasure. I wish you just the deepest amount of pleasure, and I wish you even a deeper capacity to hold it and experience it and just make it sustainable and let it enrich and nourish your life. And because of that, you now are able to enrich and nourish the lives of others. So yeah, so that's all I got for you. Okay, bye.